Hi everyone, I'm making a quick tutorial on the hybrid site plan that you'll be preparing for your midterm, just to clear up some of the confusion students are facing. And so we're going to start with just the raw line work that was given to everyone. I'm going to make a 550 by 850 foot box. And now this box, you can center it on your project. And so the one thing to be mindful of is if your project lands like towards the edge, you don't want your line work to fall off. So make sure you're giving yourself enough margins. Um, I'll center it on the bridge for this example. And while I could export all of this line work and use this box as a datum, I'm going to trim the line work away just using the trim command. Like that. This will make the post-processing in Illustrator a little bit lighter if I don't have like the entire CAD background present. And so what we'll do, get these lines too. All right. So we'll take this and we're going to export. And so as prescribed, you all know that these should fit on an 11 by 17. And so we'll export directly to Illustrator. You can do this whole thing in Illustrator. And when this dialog pops up, the scale that we'll be working at on the page is 50 feet equals an inch. And so we're going to set our model scale for the first field into 50 feet and the output scale or our drawing scale to 1 inch. And I'll go open that. All right. So we'll make sure that this is exported correctly before we go on to the next step. Something that can happen when you export to scale is things will fall off the page. And so if you come to your property panel up here and just type 0 and then tab 0 really quickly, it'll center it. You can also avoid this in Rhino by taking the line work you plan to export and sending it to 0, 0 prior to exporting. When you preserve the model scale in an export, it tries to realign the line work to the location in the file. And so since our files are pretty large, like how far away is that? Only 13,000 feet. So that's where it's going to be placed in Illustrator, which is quite far. And so now we're here in Illustrator. We have our 11 by 17 artboard. This is actually not 11 by 17. It's 12 by 17. There we go. And so you'll see that our 850 by 550 box fits perfectly. And so this is the line work component. There is a step that I skipped that you can do in Rhino. You can do it in Illustrator. I'll show both really quickly. And so to mask, if you want to do like a collage site plan, we'll look at what you can also do with Google Earth. You can take these 3 lines. And so I'm taking like the shore contour line on either side. And then I'm taking the perimeter box that I used. And if I come to Shape Builder, I can create these shapes as individual shapes. And then I'll be able to use these as masks for the images in the background. And so let's take a step away. We'll go to Google really quickly. And I have an aerial view. I'm in Google Earth on the web browser. You can also use the desktop app. And I know, one, that I can orient myself to true north, and that I have this body of water and this bridge here. If I kind of eyeball, we'll put these on a different layer, turn them off. So I know that I kind of want to censor the bridge on either side. Of course, this is vertical, whereas like my screen is horizontal. So I'm going to have some extra context so I can cut it down. Uh, as you get closer, and you can do it in sort of panorama, just be mindful of like the polygons in these trees. You don't want to get too close. And what you can also do, which is why Google Earth is a little better than Google Maps for this exercise, is you can turn up all of the labels very easily. And you can print your screen. I'm just going to use the snipping tool and take a screen capture with this, and that automatically copied to my clipboard. So I'll put that on my very back layer. And what I'm going to do is use the bridge in the image. Oh no, it looks like we're a little crooked to line it up. So pretty easily get there. The snip I took is not the highest resolution, so you guys can hopefully source something better. And I'll show you where you can find some seamless textures to do the collaging that is suggested in the brief. So this very, oh my God. Um, we're gonna go get textures. So my preference for textures, it's mostly architectural textures, less so organic like site textures, but we can interpolate pretty well like a stone or earth texture here is architectures. Uh, it's free, but there is a paid portion to it. And so what you can look for on here are like stone textures, earth textures. You can really use anything. I mean, anything that's appropriate to the site. We'll use a concrete texture, and I'm going to turn off the pattern so that I just have a nice clean concrete. We'll bring that in. So we'll want one texture for our earth. You might want another texture for your paths, and then you might want another texture for your water. So I'm going to go gather those. Okay, so I've gone and gathered some textures. I have the seamless concrete texture. I found a nice water texture that's pretty inoffensive. And I have these earth textures. You'll see that they're pretty small. I just tiled them to expand the usable area. And you'll also see that I've taken a better aerial from Google Earth. If you do decide to use an image from Google Earth, you can go into the layers and you'll want to turn off the 3D buildings. The 3D tree rendering is not very great at this level of detail. If we were zoomed out further, it might be okay, but since we're trying to get some site information that's pretty close up, the 3D trees are not going to do it. So make sure you turn that off if you take a screen cap and you'll get 2D satellite imagery. Back to Illustrator, we have that lined up, and I'll show that as one option that you can do. But more importantly, let's look at how we can take some of these textures. And so the first thing I'll do is the concrete. I'm going to kind of deploy it as a method of communicating trails, but I also am not entirely in love with the color. So what I'll do is I'm just going to overlay a box on it. And since I want it to kind of read like earth, we're going to go for kind of like an orange, a bit of brown. And we're going to make it very light. And then we can use the overlay, the opacity modifiers to just get the right quality of layering here. I'm not trying to make it exactly brown, but I do want to add some warmth to it so it's not just like straight concrete. And you saw how I made these fills for masking. Um, I'm going to make additional ones for the paths. Thank you. So we can use these lines. The issue is that they are not perfectly closed, it looks like. So we can try to close them like right here. Both sides like that. And the good way to test if they are in fact closed So if we toggle the shape, and if we also do Control Y, we can see the individual paths. It looks like these paths are correct. So we'll grab this interior island and using Shape Builder again, we'll make a path. My 2 layers here. And I think if I make these a group and then mask it. And so your mask will be on your properties panel. You'll see if I have both of these, I select the image in the background and the image or the line work in the foreground that I'm cutting it into. I can make a clipping mask just like that. And it keeps the overlay opacity from my color layer. And then we'll be using this earth to do the site. You can apply this in layers as well. So if we start to group this, um, we might try to have it kind of relate to either our site focus. And so maybe my site is here and I want it to be bolder and then kind of fade out. But before we do that, let's actually do the water. So we'll scale these a little bit and I'll align these a little better. All right. And just because they're kind of bold, I'm gonna lighten them by about 50%. And we bring it over. Let's see, it looks okay. And once we group them, we can again use our line work. Ignoring all the warnings and say yes. And so now you see that I moved the layer. We're just going to slide that back down to the correct layer with our dirt texture. So now we have water and we have a sort of like bridge. Seeing this with the earth, I'm kind of second guessing that color choice. So I'm going to again overlay, make this a bit more green. Something like this. And again, selecting an overlay type to make these colors interact nicely. We'll go for multiply. All right. So this will sort of act as our like vegetation portion. I could also extend this path here. Not going to. And so I'm going to do this in two passes. I'm going to make one for the left side of the screen and then one for the right. And I'm just copying these by pressing Alt and dragging. It does look like this one will need to be a little larger. I could also increase the size of my grouped images, these things. So I could add a couple of rows like this to fit the outline and cover all of the site that I need, like that. And then all we have to do is update the green fill and then group these again. And so again, we're going to use these nice color fills that we made. We'll show it on this side. As you can see when I'm selecting it, I'm grabbing the contours so I can just lock that layer. I could tell it was the contours because the red box indicates that it's on the red layer. And also it's showing a stroke instead of a fill. I'm looking for the red fill of these. So I'll grab both, make a clipping mask. All right. I'll do the same on the other side. Just like that. So now the image is kind of taking shape. So you know what? These two were not groups. There we go. Much better. Okay. And so you'll see the line work now is not looking very good. We can take either through selecting. So we'll look at our layers. We have the buildings on a layer. We have the curves on a layer. And the contours are on a layer. And so we can use this circle by selecting to select everything on this layer. And this is where you can express some of your creativity. Could be white lines overlaid. Just be mindful again. So if we come down here, we can maximize this. Just be mindful of how dense the lines are. You probably don't want to do 1 point. I'm going to lighten this. I think something lighter. It's a little better, but just be prepared to like test print if you have the time. For the buildings, I only have one building on my site. I'm going to just make it a white fill like that. And then for these curb lines, so I can't use the same trick because I have other layer information on here. So instead of grabbing it, I'll just grab these. I can expand the layer and select everything individually. So I'm grabbing these individual paths. We're going to give them also a white outline, and we'll bring them to the front too, so that they show over top of our road texture. And so at this point, we have kind of assembled a collage. This is like the baseline for what I would consider the hybrid site plan to be. The next step, of course, is to Photoshop your project into here. And just to show you how you might do that in Illustrator, I'm going to take a snip from the tutorial PDF and I'll um, make my own on here. So here's a very nice project. I wonder if Will made this when he made this PDF. So we're just going to mask out the outline of the building. You can do this in Illustrator. You can do it in Photoshop. Both of these processes, making the site plan and photoshopping your building out, can be done in either. Obviously, the vector work, like all the line work, is not going to be as concise in Photoshop. It's going to take a bit more legwork to get them reading nicely. And I'm doing a very quick hatch job on this. All right. And so now that I have the outline, I'm really just taking like a general footprint. Again, so if I have this footprint, I can grab both objects using Shift to click on both of them or just dragging a selection box, and I can make a clipping mask very crudely. And now this is a bit of a hard part. You do have the full line data in your files, hopefully. So you can use, if I say I had a picture of this and then I had a plan of my site, I could use that to scale it. You can also like overlay your models. The use of the visual scale here can also help. These drawings are 1 to 50. So for instance, you might know that your building is 50 feet long. I can use that dimension here and say that my building is an inch long because of our scale. That does look kind of small though, so we're gonna do like an inch and a half. And then you'll place it on the site, however it goes. And so this, at this point, if you're doing it in Photoshop, you can very nicely blend it into like the tree canopy and into the site, and you can make it feel very embedded. Illustrator is not going to be as seamless. And so there's our hybrid site plan. You can see it with my collage layers there and my Google Earth layers like that. Good luck, everyone.